Welcome, Dr. James Anderson, to this first episode of the Wetland Talks series organized by the Foundation for Ecological Welfare, India. And first of all, on behalf of many wetland admirers from India, the US, and many other countries, bunch of thanks to you for readily accepting an invitation so readily and to function as our first wetland expert interviewee. And probably I have a privilege of being one of your former doctoral students at West Virginia University, and I feel that that's why you were considerate about me. Otherwise, I know that you are pretty busy nowadays because you have taken new responsibility as a director of Kennedy Center at Clemson University. So many thanks, Jim.
Oh, you are welcome, Keaton.
Thank you.
Dr. Tattoo. So yeah, I appreciate you allowing me to be, I guess, your first guest on this.
Yes,
what I hope to be a long-term series. So yeah, this is great. I'm extremely excited that you decided to do this.
Yeah, it's a great start for us. Okay. So the first thing that comes to my mind, Dr. Anderson, is that you have treaded a long journey of about 3 decades, if I'm not wrong, as far as professional wetland research and wetland science or wetland education is concerned. And to carry out such a long journey, it requires a lot of interest. I would say exceptional interest. So I'm curious to know which factors triggered your exceptional interest in wetland at amateur level, because nobody starts at professional level. First, in my case also, I was at amateur level. I was interested in as a hobbyist. So it might be like that for you too. So I'm interested in knowing, Dr. Anderson, which were the triggering factors for you to start taking interest in wetlands at amateur level?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up on a dairy farm in Wisconsin in the United States.
Okay.
As a child in growing up in Wisconsin, I would go out and explore our wetlands and explore the farm. And it wasn't just the wetlands that I was looking at. I was exploring everything, and I didn't really know what a wetland was, of course, at that point in time. But I would always be attracted back to that same wetland area, right? A couple of areas on the farm. There's an old oxbow wetland with hummocks, which are sedges. And so from there, I would, explore. I did a lot of muskrat trapping. So this was, 40, 45 years ago. Things were quite a bit different than they are today.
Right.
But, people use furs quite a bit. And so I would trap muskrats and I would sell those. And so that's how I really got involved with learning about wetlands and learning about wildlife. And then as I got older, I went to college, and I knew, again, I wanted to work with wildlife. I wasn't sure I wanted to just do wetlands, but as I learned more and developed more skills, I decided, yes, I really do like wetlands. Right. And so I spent the summer at the Upper Souris National Wildlife Refuge, which is in North Dakota. And I worked with George Mays, and George was the refuge biologist, and amazing biologist. So I learned so much about wetland ecology, waterfowl ecology, and that really strengthened my interest and made me basically want to do that for the rest of my life. And then the next summer, this was I think like summer of 1989, I worked at Red Rock Lakes, which is another national wildlife refuge. This one's in Montana, and Carl Mitchell was the biologist there. And so again, great biologist, taught me a lot about wetlands and these unique high elevation wetland systems. And it was a pretty amazing area to work in. And so I learned, again, a lot more about wetlands, continued to develop. And that was kind of, I was still an amateur at that point in time, right? I was learning a lot.
Okay.
So I think it's important to have good mentors, and then also important to have, just inquisitive nature to go out and look at things. So that's where I started from.
I think that inquisitive nature is very important. I think, and it is, I think, essential quality also, Jim. Dr. Anderson, you have written at some place, I read your article, and you have written that wetlands mirror the complexity of human soul. Can you explain about it? It's a bit difficult to understand.
Yeah, so I just think wetlands are extremely complex. You go out to a wetland
I agree with
site,
that.
and one day the water level is really high, right? And then you come back on another day and the water level is low, so you got this changing hydrology. You've got these species that are there one day and then they're gone another day. So there's all these different confounding variables.
Yes.
So you could go to the same wetland site, I think, day after day, right, for a year. And you're going to see different things each time you go. Different plants are flowering, different species are there, the water levels are different, invertebrate populations and composition are changing. And so I just think they're highly complex. And, that's just one wetland. And then you start looking at, we have all these different wetland types. You go into a new wetland system, and they basically are all different.
Right. And at another place, I read that you wrote My Journey as a Wetland Scientist, that article I read. And in that you have mentioned that it is a love story. What's that?
Yeah, so I think it is a love story, and so I think I developed my love for wetlands by going out into them, and so one story from my childhood growing up is, I mentioned these wetlands on the farm. And, I would go out after a big rainfall, right, and we had American toads and Anaxis americanus. And so I'd go out and I'd catch these. Like by the hundreds, I'd fill up these 5-gallon pails full of it was just a huge number, right?
Right.
And so I took them back to the barn, and we had a water trough. I put them in the water trough. It rained, it was raining a lot right then. The next morning, they're all gone. They're back down in the wetland and calling and whatnot. But, just memories like that of going out and, interacting with nature, to me was a tremendous part of that love. And I think it continues to develop, so you mentioned you were one of my PhD students, right? And so, every time I have a new student, master student or PhD student, I think that reinvigorates that love a bit, right? Because it's, you're so excited coming in and it's new to you, right? And so, that reinvigorates, one as a scientist and a professional that works in these systems. So, so anyways, you're responsible for part of that growth of my love story for sure.
And you have talked about American toads, but anything about waterfowl, like Canada geese and some other? Some mallards?
All sorts of things. Yeah. So, a couple of things. Just thinking about the farm. So we had great blue herons. And great blue herons on the farm. And I always wondered about them. Obviously I wasn't a scientist at the time. I was just an inquisitive kid, but I would only see one. I'm like, well, why is there only one? Right? And I'd only see one at a time. And is it the same one I see all the time, or is there a male and a female? And I think about things like that. And I think about, where are they nesting? Right? And they come here and they fish, because I know they're foraging, they're catching fish or catching amphibians, and then they leave. So they must be nesting somewhere else, right? But, I didn't know enough about it at the time. I don't know how old I was, 6, 7, 8 years old. But, I knew I was thinking about those sorts of things. And so that was, I guess one influence. We had mallards on the farm. Again, same kind of thing. I'd see these mallards come in, usually a flock of a couple. Once in a while, you'd have wood ducks that you would see.
Okay.
But those, numbers were pretty low again as a kid, and as I got older, those populations seemed to increase in numbers.
Right.
As I developed and got out of the farm and went to college, I did more and more work with waterfowl. And I got to work with Canada geese. I worked with snow geese. I worked with pretty much just about every species of waterfowl. I worked with mute swans with you, right? I know you like your mute swans. Yep. I worked with trumpeter swans out in Montana. So there's all sorts of species I've had the privilege of working on. And even right now, so coming into this new position here as the director of the Kennedy Waterfowl and Wetland Center at Clemson, I've been invited to be part of a large collaborative wood duck study. And so we're looking at wood duck reproduction in artificial nest boxes across multiple states here in southeastern U.S. And there's always something new to learn and new. I work with wood ducks. Haven't obviously never worked with wood ducks in this region, so it's pretty awesome.
Is it an endangered duck, Dr. Anderson? Wood duck?
I'm sorry. Say again.
Is it an endangered species?
No. So the wood duck. Historically, if you think back to a lot of regions, I guess, right around the world, early 1900s, late 1800s, the U.S. went and cut a lot of the forest across the eastern U.S., and that caused that population to decline and plummet. In 1930s, they started using nest boxes, and these nest boxes are often associated with increased populations. And so now the question is, do we still need wood duck nest boxes as our forests have recovered and are recovering? And there's lots of places where there's still lots of money that's being spent on wood duck boxes. So is it worth that time and investment to do that?
So it's a great example that wetlands and forests both are interconnected through this species, because though it's a waterfowl, it uses trees to build a nest. I think they nest in the tree holes, as I have read somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they're cavity nesters, right? So they nest in these cavity trees. So natural cavities, or potentially secondary cavities created by woodpeckers and things like that. So there's a very close link between forest health as well as wetlands. And we need to think about that, I think, for all species, right? It's not just a wetland sitting out there on the landscape. It's in a watershed context, and all the upstream waters that enter that wetland are certainly having an impact.
Yes, I agree. At one place you have written, wetlands have always been a magical place for me. And magics can be sometimes awesome, or sometimes they can be scary too. So, do you remember any remarkable experience while working in wetlands, or maybe in a nice way or some scary way? So it will be good for the students, and some young people.
Right. So when I was talking about being a magical place, again, I'm thinking about how complex they are. And you go there, and one day you'd have all sorts of animals out there. So again, thinking about the American toads.
I think you have also worked with alligators, or?
Yep, I've worked with crocodiles. We're hoping to get some alligator stuff going now. But if we think about the American toads, right? I didn't know what it was called at the time, but I knew that at some point in time they would come out and they would call like crazy, right? Well, they're explosive breeders, right? Explosive breeders, come out after rainfall. And so obviously now I know the terminology, but as a kid I didn't know what that was. But I knew that pattern, right? I could see that pattern of what was happening. I knew when to go out and to get them. So to me, that's what makes it magical. If you think about, maybe things more sinister, I guess, if you will, working in wetlands is difficult, right? Access is difficult. You have mud. I had a student named Dave Helon, and Dave, I don't know if you remember Dave, if you were around at the same time he was. But
yes, I remember. Yep.
And so he was working over along the Atlantic coast in these various wetland impoundments. And one time I was out helping him, and he was going out to collect some seed heads because we were basically measuring carrying capacity for waterfowl. And a lot of these wetlands, depending on the soil composition and the hydrology, they get very muddy. And he basically just started sinking lower and lower into the mud. And I had to go out and end up getting a rope for him to pull him out of there. So yeah, I mean that's pretty magical, right? To see somebody sinking down into the mud. So I thought that was pretty good. And then like you say, you think about crocodilians. Working with we got to work with American crocodile down in Belize with Miriam Boucher. She was my master's student down there. And, she did a great job. But I mean, there's lots of things you worry about. Snakes. We have venomous snakes that work out, that live out there. There's lots of insects. Mosquitoes we worry about.
Right.
So lots of challenges. So both magical from a good perspective, I guess, and then also maybe from a more sinister aspect.
Right. So I think a lot of adventure is there in working with wetlands. It's an adventurous work. Yep.
Highly adventurous, I would say, in many cases. And then particularly, if you think about, a young student coming in, depending on their background and where they've worked before, coming into these wetland areas, it might be a first experience for them. And so very impressionable, I would say, and leaves a lasting impression on you.
Yep. So actually, my next question was about young wetland enthusiasts. Like, what can a young aspiring wetland enthusiast keep in mind regarding college and university education in building his or her career as wetland professional? So what should they consider, if he or she wants to be a wetland professional?
Great question. So I think one is finding the right major for what you want to do. Starting out as a bachelor of science, then finding mentors, I think, is a good thing. And so if people open the door for you and invite you in, it's up to you to basically grab that handle of the door and open it up and walk in. Right? I know. They're not going to pursue you because there's a lot of people, right, that want to come in and work in a wetland. And so, faculty members going to basically select people that do want to get their feet wet, if you will, right? So that's what you need to do. So you need to, I think, take advantage of those mentoring opportunities. And then for, to be a wetland professional, if you will, you most likely are going to have to do an advanced degree, master's, PhD, one or the other, both, in order to achieve some of those goals. And again, I think it's important to find good mentors that are able to work with you. And then the other thing to think about, I think, is don't just come to them and say, hey, do you have a position, for a master's student? It's like, well, I mean, I get, tons of those inquiries every week, right? And so it's like, I wish I had a position to put all of you in, but I don't, right? And so it's very competitive. But if you come to me with a plan and say, hey, I really would like to, get a master's degree, this is what I want to work on. I know we need funding. I've got some ideas for funding. I've got some ideas for how we can make this work. Well, to me, that's showing much more initiative, and then I'm much more willing, and I know other faculty are much more willing to work with that student. So it has to be a two-way street. It's not just
it's not a one-way traffic. It's not a one-way
exactly,
traffic. Yep.
Yeah, you can't just expect someone to hand you a project.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that is, you need to have developed your experience. By the time you're coming in to a master's program, you should have multiple, summers and internship experiences working in wetlands. You can't just expect to not do anything, in terms of gaining experience as an undergraduate and then trying to get into a master's or PhD program. It doesn't work that way. So, so that would be my, I guess, best suggestion is get experience and
that's
be
very
proactive. And figure out a way to make it happen. And don't take no for an answer. There's going to be doors slammed in your face for sure, right? Because that's the nature of the business. Again, everybody, if you have one position, you might have 100 applicants for that position, and what's going to make you stand out? That is again that experience and what you have done and what you can offer that project.
All right. Dr. Anderson, we talked about formal education till now, but is there any scope for informal education in imparting wetland knowledge to students, or not just students, but any other section of the society? So what is the role of informal education? Can it be effective, and what can be the strategies for that kind of education?
Okay, great question. And so, we think about formal and we think about, informal education. And, we talked a little bit about formal in terms of, going to get your bachelor's, getting your master's, PhD. Informal education, are things like, you go to a nature center, right? Or a wetland center. You go out and you go to an interpretive talk. And so maybe there's somebody that's leading a walk on, wetland plants or on, wetland dragonflies and, those sorts of things. And so I think there's always something to learn. As you said, I've been in, the business for, 30 years now, and I'm learning something new every day. And that's for me is pretty awesome. Right. And a lot of it is in this, informal education where you're going out, you're talking to people. Right, about because they've been working on this system, and
since many years. Yep.
Yeah, maybe 30, 40, 50 years, right? They've been working on these systems. Obviously, they know a heck of a lot more about a particular system than somebody new coming in. And so, I think you need to talk to people, find that out. Museums are another great area to go to. You can see dioramas, right? You can see species.
I still remember there was a museum in Percival Hall.
And we've actually grew that. So Dr. Tattoo's talking about back at West Virginia University. We had we had a small museum there, and we've actually developed that a little bit larger, moved it out into the lobby, and so that's quite a little attraction. So I think those sorts of things are highly important. You have done a great job with your informal education, I think, while doing things like this, right? We're doing these interviews. I know you started a video series, and you've had a long history with your periodical Jalaplavit, which, is designed to reach, people that want to learn more about wetlands. And it's not a peer-reviewed, but it's a peer-edited type of coffee table type of magazine. I think it's very, very nice, right? Because you have lots of pictures, you have good stories, and very, very educational and informative for sure.
Okay, thank you. What is the significance of research for having a well-being for the well-being of wetlands? Means what I want to ask that. Is it not enough to impart education or awareness or implementing policies and laws? What is the use of research? Is it not just an intellectual pursuit? If I want to keep my wetlands intact, what's the role of research in that? Some people say that it is just an intellectual pursuit. So
right, and so I think you could view it that way, but most of the work I think being done is more applied in nature, right? And so we basically are asking questions about things that need to be addressed. So, like, how do we, improve wetland management to avoid whatever flooding, right? Or how do we enhance our management of a wetland to increase, species productivity? Those sorts of things.
I agree.
So I don't think it's just a intellectual pursuit. Now there can be things like that, right? It's still nice to to know, well, why do frogs call more when it's warmer out than when it's cooler? I mean, things like that, which maybe don't really have don't really mean anything from a management perspective, but it's still interesting to know. Right? And so I mean that maybe is more from an intellectual standpoint that you'd want to know something along those lines, but I think there's this combination of applied and basic research that we need to continue to move on.
Yep, I agree. And what about research on wetlands in context of climate change? Everybody knows that climate change is a big issue in the modern world. So, can you explain some importance about wetland research with respect to climate change issues?
Yeah, another good question. I think that's going to be a larger issue, obviously, as we move forward. We are being impacted by climate change. And so I moved from the mountains of West Virginia. Now I'm on the coast in South Carolina. And so, everybody, down here talks about climate change and sea level rise and flooding, right? And so all the wetland managers, even people of the public, they all understand, it's an issue and that, things are happening and changing. And so I think, we need to seriously address that because it's going to impact our ability to manage these wetlands. We have a lot of managed coastal impoundments for waterfowl, for other species here. And so the rising sea levels is changing that. It's not just the water level that rises. Well, as you have a sea level rise, you also start impacting more inland wetlands that are tidally influenced. It used to be fresh water. Now you have salt water that's intruding into these areas. Salt water, obviously, can kill plants, right, if they're not salt adapted. So you start having mortality of trees and other vegetation. Your vegetation composition starts to change. And so, there's kind of a snowball effect, right? Well, now that also allows different invasive species to move in that you wouldn't have had previously. And so that continues to be an issue. So I think, climate change, species adaptations, all those sorts of things are continue to be important aspects of wetland research.
One more question, Dr. Anderson. How are policies and laws playing roles in wetland and wetland wildlife conservation? Are they effective enough? And because you are working in the US since so many years, you may tell something with the example of US, USA.
So I think United States has some good policies, maybe not as strong as they could be in some areas, but one thing I like to point to a lot and talk about is our wetland mitigation policy. So we know wetlands are important, right? We talk about all the ecosystem services like wildlife habitat and flood control and water quality improvement, those sorts of things. Well, because they've been important, the U.S. said, well, we need to start protecting some of these wetlands, and so they have a wetland mitigation policy, which basically states that if you are doing some type of development, let's say, and you impact a wetland, then you have to basically replace that wetland with a new wetland. And so there's these mitigation ratios depending on the type and complexity of that wetland system.
Okay.
And so you can basically create wetlands or restore wetlands, right? We've lost, we know we've lost more than half of our wetlands, and probably closer to 60 to 70% at this point in time of the wetlands across the world have been lost. So if we can restore those, right, and or create new wetlands, then we can basically continue to have some wetland function. So to me, that's like a great story in terms of laws. Another one I like to always think about is our Duck Stamp Act. And this was developed in the 1930s. So in the United States at that point in time, we had a drought, and it's a Dust Bowl era, and so all these wetland systems were pretty dry, and so some of the wetland waterfowl conservation community came together and said, well, we need to go ahead and have these duck stamps where we can put money aside to purchase wetlands and restore wetlands and conserve wetlands. And so that's continued to this day, where if you are a waterfowl hunter, and then even non-waterfowl hunters will buy these stamps, and pretty much all that money goes towards wetland conservation.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
So, it's a kind of a user pay type system, right? If you you believe in conservation, you believe in conserving wetlands, then you buy one of these stamps. And now they start out as $1. They're $25 today, but still pretty cheap in terms of being able to help wetland systems.
Yeah. Dr. Anderson, what is the role of some international organizations like Wetlands International and some international treaties like Ramsar Convention, Bonn Convention? What is the role of them for the long-term conservation and wise use of wetlands?
Yeah. So you mentioned some good international organizations, and I think for many countries, if we think about it, this might be really the only avenue they have. So not every country has strong wetland laws, or even if they do, right, it's very difficult to enforce a lot of these things, or how do you enforce stuff? And even with international treaties, it's difficult enforcement, but at least you get more buy-in, you get more integrated power across the countries that are all working kind of towards the same concept of trying to conserve wetlands. And so Ramsar, I think is extremely important for much of the world in terms of trying to conserve our wetland systems.
Okay. If I may ask, what is your plan for waterfowl and wetland conservation as the director of Kennedy Center? And if it is too specific, can you just give guidelines for any nature conservation organization? What should be the line of action for wetland conservation, or what should be the thrust area for wetland conservation in general?
So great question. So I've been in this position for about 2 months now, as the director of the Kennedy Waterfowl and Wetland Conservation Center at Clemson University. And so I've been spending a lot of my time just talking with people. So what are the major issues down here? And you already touched on one in terms of climate change, right? And so that's going to be a huge, I think, emphasis for us. But we'll be doing obviously lots of waterfowl work. I mentioned the wood duck study. Looking at the wood duck nest boxes. Also have a student coming in that will be looking at she is looking at natural cavity use of wetlands. We are going to be hiring a postdoc soon that'll do some population modeling in the region. So working a lot on waterfowl. I've got another student that's going to just be doing general waterbird surveys, and so basically looking at the temporal trends of populations and migration chronology, those sorts of things. And then I want to be able to, I've done a lot of wetland mitigation work in the past. I want to continue doing that. And I don't just, even though we are called a Waterfowl and Wetland Center, I don't want to just think about waterfowl. If interesting questions come up, and on whatever, on American alligators, or on turtles or fish or whatever it might be that live in wetlands.
Okay.
Right? I think the more we learn about these things, no matter what they are, the better off we are in terms of conserving wetlands. So I want to be fairly broad in terms of my interpretation of the types of species and the types of questions and issues that we address.
Okay. I think you have also worked in China and India, some work. So how was your experience in those countries, if I may ask?
So I have spent a little bit of time in both China and India. I got to work with you in India and some
yes. That was a great experience.
Training. Yep. And it's a great experience. I think you again have developing programs. You do a lot of good conservation work. There's a lot of interest for sure. I think in terms of your wetland conservation. You're publishing a lot of stuff that's coming out, and so I think your programs are really moving forward quite greatly.
Thank you.
Same thing in China. They're obviously, they worry a lot about population, population growth, those sorts of things, air quality. And so my experience there has been more focused around their interest in wetlands for water quality improvement, air quality improvement, those sorts of things, particularly in urban environments. If you think about huge cities like Beijing, China.
Yes.
You've got potential for lots of pollution just because you have lots of people, and so these wetlands can help with a lot of that as well.
Correct. So, Dr. Anderson, in the end, what message would you like to give to the people regarding wetlands in general?
That's a great question. So
I'm asking this question because you are a wetland guru and you have spent your life in working with wetlands. So, what would be the most important message that you would like to convey?
So I think if I boil it down to one thing, I think it's wetlands are important ecosystems that need conservation. Right, but what can you do as an individual? Because if you're not a professional wetland researcher, or if you're striving to be that way, let's just think about what we can do. And so I think anything we can do to conserve our natural resources. Going back to reduce, reuse, recycle, right? That kind of thing. We think about plastics. I mean, you go out in a wetland, there's plastics, floating around here and there. Well, let's try to reduce our litter stream for one. Right. What can we do in terms of reducing our water use, reducing our yard runoff, our pollution, all those sorts of things. So I came from West Virginia. I lived there for 22 years, and I lived out on a piece of property that was not in town, and so I never worried about fertilizing the lawn, or half of my lawn was weeds. It wasn't grass, right? But so I moved from that to down here in South Carolina, and it's heavily populated area. Lots of lawns, and they don't want any weeds in these yards, right? And so they're spraying different chemical herbicides on these lawns, right? They're maintaining them. They mow right down to the water. All these things that are detrimental, if you will, to water quality. And so I think we just can be cognizant about educating people and aware of the issues with continuing to do these practices. So I think anything that we as a society can do to reduce our impact on nature, I think will help wetlands. So thank you very much, Dr. Anderson, for sparing your valuable time, and this will really help students, and even not students, but some other people also are interested in wetlands and nature. So your ideas and your knowledge will help them a lot. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, you're welcome, Dr. Tattoo. I enjoyed my time here, and again, the Kennedy Waterfall and Wetland Center, is happy to be part of this initial program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay.